Okay, yes, we can start. Okay, I'm pleased to introduce the speaker of today. Professor Xu is an assistant professor at the Department of Computer Science, University of Texas at San Antonio. He received his PhD in computer sciences in 2000 from Fudan University in China. He carries on a lot of research in the area of system-oriented security analysis and design with emphasis on cryptographic design and analysis. He has a lot of funds from agencies such as NSF, RO. So you can find many more information about his research on his website. So I'll give him the floor.
Thank you, Professor Purdue. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about policy-driven, privacy-preserving access control with mixed credentials. This is a joint work with Motion from Colombia. First, I will introduce a brief introduction on the motivation of this research, and then I will discuss some ingredients that have been adopted in this work. And I really see that this work is like the first work of a line of research, so I'm really happy about it. And then I will present a specific product, construct, which is called assembly signatures. And then we will discuss how to incorporate revocability into assembly signatures, which is sometimes important. And then we will conclude with some very challenging open problems, most of which I have sorted quite a bit, but no solution yet. So the overall motivation is to do access control in particularly large scale decentralized systems, which is sometimes really interesting. So actually I have several things I can talk about, but I deliberately choose this topic because many researchers like Professor Lin Hui and so on, they know much better about the policy or that kind of thing than me. So I really hope I get some feedback. Okay, in such systems, overall there is no centralized authority. Okay, and each participant in the system doesn't even have the picture of the whole system, only a view or partial of the system. Okay. So always the service provider or the resource owner, they determine some policy based on their view of the system. And then the service requesters, they have certain credentials, hopefully whereby they can get access to the resource of the providers. Okay. That is a basic functionality, but in a more kind of fancy, but should be more useful version of the picture, we want more properties. First is privacy preserving. Hopefully, the service requester doesn't have to leak what credentials they have, or not even say their identity or something like that. On the other hand, the service provider may not even know which resource the service requester have access to. So there is a notion of like a PIR, private information field or something. It's kind of that. Okay, but today we're not getting into that more. And then, of course, access control should be always stick to certain policies. This is really old topic in computer security. And sometimes the accountability is really important, particularly if anonymous access is allowed. So because the anonymity protection should not be used as a shield for doing something bad. So the law enforcement need to get those bad guys accountable. So the problem is very natural, okay, because these days like a peer-to-peer system or something like that are really like a decentralized. However, there are a bunch of literature schemes, quite many, and many of them are contributed by the Purdue community. So, but I do see that there are overall two approaches. One approach is able to accommodate many advanced cryptographic constructs. So this is many done by the crypto community people. Particularly since David Chang, and many people notions he provided, and many followers did a tons of job. But somehow not so surprisingly, corrupt people, they don't consider policy, or at least not a flexible policy. They only consider policy something like you probably already familiar with, like a 1 out of 1 or 2 out of 1 at most. Okay. On the other hand, in other community, particularly in the security community, they do consider very flexible policies, but they don't really take a full advantage of all the cryptographic constructs, as we will say. There are cases. Okay. So the motivation is why don't we? The problem is well known, but we don't have a fully satisfactory solution either. So why don't we kind of unify the two approaches under the same framework? Okay, so kind of in order to do that, we will just generalize each of them a little bit. So hopefully we can achieve that. But it turns out there are many challenging problems, and indeed, I would like to say this is the first work which reflects our preliminary result, and there are many challenging problems in order to achieve the ultimate goal. So we discuss briefly the ingredients which are adopted in this specific work. The first is about the taxonomy about the credentials, and then a class of policies which are accommodated by our work, and then there is a cryptographic ingredient called Schema protocols. So we classify credentials into 4 categories. One is identity credential. So there is a explicit certificate like 509, so everybody knows about it. And typically the certificate is about its identity and the public key, or sometimes identity and the public key can merge in the context of identity-based crypto, or even identity-based secret key crypto system. So there are such schemes. Okay, the disadvantage with this kind of credential is that there is no anonymity whatsoever. Okay, and then second is what we call sibling credentials. So there are still explicit certificates, but they do achieve a little bit of anonymity because they don't put your real name on the certificate. So there are some pseudonym, just like your driver license. If you don't like it, you put your SSN on it, you can select a random strand, something like that. But still, the anonymity is weak because of linkability, which means if I see the same driver's license twice, then I know they are from the same guy. Even though from at that point I don't know exactly who is the guy. Okay. And then there is attribute credentials, which still use the explicit certificate. However, it could have many attributes, and the values could be encrypted. And then based on some zero knowledge proof or that kind of cryptographic techniques, you can show you are really the owner of the certificate. Okay, but still it's a weaker anonymity because of linkability. However, I recently got some idea which can probably do something better, but I have not fully really investigated the details. So the last one is anonymous credentials, which have been really explored by the crypto community for a long time, more than 15 years or so. Okay, and indeed they are quite challenging, and only until like 2000 or so we had some really nice constructs. In such credentials, there is no explicit certificate, and therefore they can achieve strong anonymity in the sense that even if, say, yesterday I convince you I have certain credential, and today, so you don't even know they are from the same person. Okay, so this is really strong. And the typical example is what we call is what is known as group signatures. Okay, basically group signatures means that you can convince a verifier that you are a member of Purdue, but without identifying who you are. Okay, and even say tomorrow you went to the same shop, they don't know yesterday you were there. Okay, so the unlinkability, this probably has been really the driving force which guides the research in crypto community for a long time. and still be. And they say, particularly if you are familiar with the notion of electronic cache, you will realize there are tons of literatures that are really driven by this need. So that is from one perspective. From another perspective, we can further classify the credentials into two categories. One is non-anonymous and another anonymous. So for the non-anonymous, so this is kind of standard or scheme which you have a certain components. So you need to bootstrap the system, and you need like a kind of authority to issue the credentials, and then you need a protocol for people to show other people that they do have the credentials. Okay. Now for the anonymous, there is one more component is unlimited revocation, which means that if there is something goes wrong, then the law enforcement or authority, they can trace it back to the guy who is accountable for that. So yeah, so this is some kind of definition. I will not get into. So for the properties, or what does that exactly means when we say a scheme is secure or a credential scheme is good, so we need to precisely specify the properties. So in the case of non-anonymous credentials, we need the correctness and the unforgeability. So they are quite standard with kind of the digital signature scheme. So, and then for the anonymous credentials, we need a stronger version. In many cases, a stronger version of unforgeability, which is called full traceability and full anonymity. So by full traceability, which means that even if the adversary has compromised the many participants, even if the authority who is responsible for revoking anonymity, so it's still unable to fake or any single new credential. Okay, so the notion of full anonymity means that even if your machine is compromised today, the transactions you have done yesterday or days ago is still okay. The adversary cannot get the information that you did those transactions. So these are kind of standard definitions, but it turns out that for these properties, it really took people many years to figure out. So actually, in crypto, our main difficulty is really to how to precisely capture the definition. Yeah, then this is just some formal definition. Now, the second one is the policy. So we accommodated the policy class of polynomial size, monotone threshold formula. Okay, so that is why we said that this policy is not strong enough in sense of the expression power. So here it means it's a formula circuit, and it has an OR and a threshold gets like a threshold circuit sharing or like a T out of 1. So if T out of any inputs is true, then sorry, I think this is a kind of. So you probably already see a bug in the circuit. But anyway, so it shows if like 2 out of the 3 is true, then that output is true. Okay. So here the input wires, you can define whatever it is. So you are either a member of Purdue, you could use say group signature, or use say other credentials I mentioned, identity or pseudonym or attribute. Okay, but overall. So this is the policy. This class of policy is accommodated, and then you get the input wire, and then you just traverse the circuit, and then you know the policy. You know if you have the credentials which satisfy the policy. So the access control is facilitated. So suppose the service provider has such a policy, but how should you convince the service provider you have a satisfying assignment of this circuit, right? So the most straightforward way is you kind of eager, you just show all the credentials to the service provider. So the service provider can pick some of them as long as they lead to a satisfying assignment. But that would really ruin many nice properties, particularly if you are not paranoid about their fine with privacy or that kind of thing, right? So we of course want to do something better. Okay. Yeah, so that is really something bad we want to avoid. So for this specific, we show that for many popular credentials, you can actually achieve much better. Okay, you don't even, by much better, you don't even need to show the verifier which credentials you have, let alone so whatever the value is. Okay, so the best that Asus can get is that he knows the service requester is one among all the possible users who possess the satisfying assignment to the policy. Okay, so because there could be a large number of people, then that is the policy the best you can hope for, right? And the third one is cryptographic ingredients, which is for the Sigma products. So it's kind of a special zero knowledge proof. You have NP relation R, and then you have a prover and the verifier. The prover have a witness W of X, which belongs, is a certain NP relation. So it can be polynomial time verified, and so this kind of standard. So the characteristics of this kind of protocol is that it has 3 steps. First, the prover sends some commitment to the verifier. So if we create alpha and the verifier sends some challenge back to the prover, then the prover gives some answer to the challenge. So it's kind of a challenge response. And then the verifier will decide whether to accept the statement, which in this case is that you possess the witness W such that XW belongs to the NP relation R. Okay, so for this kind of construct, we lead the 3 properties. One is called completeness, which means as long as you have such a wait list, then you can work with success. Okay, and then there is some property called spatial summitness, which means that if I challenge you twice, and for both challenges, you can give me the correct answer, then I can extract out your secret. Okay, that is something. So this is a kind of mental game which is used to capture this properties of the protocol. Okay. And there is another property which is called special honest verifier, zero knowledge, which means that if the adversary is the honest, then there is a probabilistic polynomial time simulator which can simulate the view, which means the interaction transits between the prover and the verifier without using anything except the common input X, so which is public. Okay, so this is a very nice ingredient invented by Ron Kramer back in '94 in his PhD thesis. So when we choose this ingredient as our building block, because it has a nice feature that it allows modular design. Okay, so modular composition is something really nice. And on the other hand, there are many credential schemes. They belong to this. They possess these properties. Okay, then that's the motivation why we use. And another feature is that for such Sigma protocol-based identification, even if the adversary is positive, then the security scheme is secure in the strongest sense. So we kind of get something for free. So that is nice. Of course, it has certain limitations. We will see a little bit about it later. So then this is a concrete soup. Okay, we have some ingredients: tomato, salt, and then this is our first dish. Okay, see how it looks like. Overall, the first work is about a general technique which can somehow translate or translate a bunch of inputs into output, which is something we want. Okay, so it takes input some credential schemes based on Sigma protocols, And then the output is something we really want, which means what we really want is the service provider has a policy, and then the users, they have certain credentials, they can convince the service provider that they are legitimate or authorized without leaking whatever they have. Okay, that's something we want. And then we have a kind of big or side product called the, identification, which is an interactive version of the assembly signatures. So basically, in typical access control, you come to some server, you do some interaction, one round or multiple rounds, and then you get approved, and then you can get access to the resource you want, right? So this is actually in that scenario of access control. So there is another thing quite interesting is that this construct or this dish has a property which we would call inherent collaboration enabler. So you can see it as a feature, and you can also see it as a tag. So in this sense, so this building has the gate has a policy, which means under certain circumstances you can get into this building, right? So if I have all the credentials, then I can get it. But what if I don't? I only have some of them. So if I have a friend who has others, which if we can put them together, then we can get into the building. So using this is a tag or a feature. Sometimes in certain applications it would be a feature, but under certain other circumstances, using it is a tag because you don't want people to collude, right? So if it is a tag, then we need to take care of it, right? So even think this is another manifestation of what I would like to dark side of distributed crypto system. So like a distributed crypto system, people know very, very useful. But as we showed in our paper 2 or 3 years ago, in certain cases, you can actually abuse the distributed crypto system to do very bad things, okay? So this is the full spectrum of what we would expect for. On the one end, if only one side want to protect something, if nobody want to protect something, then you can achieve the best performance. So just show, okay, I want this kind of credential, and then, okay, I have one of them, I just give you, right? So it's best performance you can expect. And on the other hand is that if both are very cautious, they don't want to leak anything, unnecessary. So you can expect that the protocol would be very expensive, many rounds and many marginal explanations and so on. Okay, so here we stand. This work we stand in the between. So because we here do not protect the policy itself, but we want to protect the privacy or anonymity of the service request. So we can achieve some like practical scheme, okay. And then for the assembly signature, of course, you need to define what that means, okay. This is really something like kind of pushed by the crypto community in the last decades or so. So you really need to define. So here we need to define like you need some bootstrapping system, and then you need to maintain the system when people join or leave, revoke or did something bad, expelled from the system. And then of course you need a signing algorithm and a verification, which basically means how the service requesters interact with the service provider, right? That's the most useful things. So for such a construct, we need to precisely define what does that mean when we say it's secure, okay? Yeah, of course, we need it to be correct in the sense that if you do possess the credentials which satisfy the policy, okay, you should always be able to get in the house. Otherwise, it's useless, right? And then on the other hand, even if you include, or not you, some bad guy who has access to credentials, and include with many other people, they have legitimate access to credentials. Even they include, they cannot fake any single parts. Otherwise, there is unauthorized the user who can get in the building, then bad thing could happen, very likely, right? So that's intuition. And the anonymity means that As I already mentioned, the intuition is that the service provider or the verifier cannot infer who exactly you are among the large candidate pool. So there are, for example, so we can assume the service provider or the adversary knows that there are, say, 100 people who possess those credentials, right? Because you have the credential issuing process or authority, right? So they know which people have credentials. So even this kind of information is linked to the adversary can still not get anything more than, say, 1 over 100. Okay, so basically a random guess. So in that count, so we can even actually just consider 2. So we just let the adversary to guess. So the adversary kind of make a guess with a probability significantly more than 50%, right? So this is kind of a standard definition in cryptography. So if that is achieved, which means if the adversary is forced to do random guess, then we say we achieved something we like. So that's a desired property. So this is the formal definition. And then it's kind of interesting that in order to prove the properties of this assembly signature schemes, somehow I cannot directly prove it. So we kind of introduce something else, and then we were anyhow finally we'll get there what we want. But just like it's not something you cannot go. I cannot go directly. So we define the identification scheme, which is kind of the interactive version of the assembly signatures, which is non-interactive. So you see the policy provide a signature, you get it into the door. Okay, here maybe we have some interaction. Okay. And then we define 2 properties for the interaction scheme. One is what we call strong security. It, of course, still require correctness. And then we define what is called extended spatial summaries. So it's extended from the spatial summaries for the underlying Sigma protocols. Okay, so it's kind of a generalization, and this says basically the same thing, but just like in a bigger context. So if you can answer the same challenge twice, then I can get a bunch of credentials which correspond to a satisfying assignment. So that is fundamentally the same as a single standard Sigma protocol. But here we're kind of a composite or compound. Okay. And the other property is also a generalization of the honest verifier zero knowledge, which means if the challenge is truly chosen random, then we can simulate. Okay. And then the anonymity, which is the same if there are 2 honest users, so the adversary or the service provider can only guess with 50%. Okay, then the advantage must be negligible. So, and then our other part is we call security. It is kind of interesting in the sense that, so the same object, you define the properties from one perspective, just like what we have did. And then from other perspective, you would look like, oh, it looks like, say from this perspective, you will either look like an elephant. From the other perspective, it looks like a monk. Yeah, maybe there is no such thing like that, but it's kind of like that here. So from another perspective, we define security in the following sense. First is correctness, of course. So which means if you possess the satisfying assignment, you should always succeed. Okay. And then no impersonation, which means that if you do not possess any satisfying assignment, you cannot succeed. Okay. So even if you have like 5 credentials, but 5 is not enough, then you cannot succeed. And then anonymity is the same, in the same sense. So this is our this is from the definition. So given that this is a very, very like a 10,000 feet high-level description of the signing algorithm, which took me some hours to figure out, but it's not very difficult. So the basic idea is that first you traverse the circuit or the policy, and then you know whether you are legitimate or not, right? If the circuit, the output is true, then you know, yes, you are authorized, right? So then for some technical reason, you need to kind of discount or forget some credentials which are not necessary. So by necessary, I mean if you know a subset of the credential, as long as they are, you can just use a subset of your credentials as long as it corresponds to a satisfying assignment. Okay, so you figure it out and then you kind of discount the others because they are kind of redundant. Okay. And then you, from bottom up to the root, you for each input wire to the leaf gate, you do kind of the standard or the sigma protocol. You make some commitment. Okay, and then you calculate the challenge, use some ideal hash function or random oracle, which then the output is affiliated with the output wire, the root. And then you kind of just traverse top-down, grade first order, and then you kind of how to calculate the challenges for each input wire of each leaf gate, so that they are consistent in the sense that they are consistent with the gates. If it and you do certain way, if it or you do certain other way, and if it is threshold, you do certain other way. Okay, and then you further bottom up. So it's kind of, yeah, we will show the exact complex. And then finally you have kind of completed kind of annotation of the policy circuit, and then that is signature. So this is basically very high level description of the signing algorithm. And for the verification, you mainly check the consistency, the challenges, how are they shared. So by each gate, for each gate, you check they are consistent. And then for the input, each input wire to the leaf gates, each gate is really valid or consistent with the challenge and sorry, it was a commitment and the response. Okay. So here is the copy of the algorithm. You cannot see it. We don't see it. So here is a security analysis. We can prove that any strongly secure assembly identification scheme is also secure assembly identification scheme. So the arrow means imply. And we can prove that security of assembly identification scheme is equivalent to security of assembly signature scheme. So what is missing is just this piece. If we can prove that our assembly identification scheme is strongly secure, then immediately it means that it is secure. So if it's secure, then the signature scheme is secure. So all the properties are rigorously defined. So we formally achieve what we want from a security perspective. Here is the performance for the signing algorithm. It's not that bad, but overall the size of the signature is proportional to the size of the policy, right, or the circuit. Okay, and particularly the very time-consuming marginal explanations, it's just proportional to the number of input wires to the leaf gates. So that's still okay. Of course, if we can get it rated, that's better. So that is actually one very interesting future work. And the communication complexity is just kind of quadratical. So it's still not that bad. So yeah.
Invoking the instances of the Sigma protocol, is that big order of B, O of B? What is B?
B is the total number of input wires to the policy. So the total number of input wires to the leaf gates.
No, but this is only invoking them. But then they may be expensive protocols. The Sigma protocol maybe is expensive, so there should be another bullet saying how much each one of the protocol instantiations costs.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's actually a very good point. Fortunately, the thing is that all such schemes right now we can achieve constant size. So yes. So in that count, so yeah, that is a good point. Yeah. So they are all can achieve the constant. For example, in the case of group signature, if you want to prove you are one among 1,000 people, so the complexity is still constant.
But if you run a zero knowledge proof on proving your license plate or your license, your ID, it is not that simple. It's a complicated procedure.
Not really. At least in this specific context, it's really cheap in the sense that just a constant number of marginal exponentiation. So for the verification, we have kind of a corresponding complexity measurement. Okay, and then we can actually, so because the main issue is that the complexity is kind of proportional to the size of the policy circuit. So we can achieve a little bit better. So we can do this at the particle level. So by which we mean that we can kind of prune the policy circuit. So of course this will be the price is paid as a kind of privacy degradation. So before the policy is pruned, so the potential size could be as in the specific scenario I mentioned, say 1,000, right? But if you prune the policy, then the potential size could be 500. So you kind of degrade the privacy guarantee from 1 over 1,000 to 1 over 500. So there is a trade-off, okay? And indeed, our standard algorithm has a heuristic to give you how to prune it. So it's not a problem. However, if you want to achieve optimum, then you have to solve some NP-hard problem. Okay, so it's easy to find some reduction from there. So, but in practice, then it should be good enough. I'm trying to wrap it soon, so we have more time to discuss. So another approach to improve the privacy that is a primitive level. Indeed, for many, not many, but for some credential schemes, we can actually prune the scheme. So the nice thing is that when you use those credential schemes standard alone, you don't need to do it. But if you kind of doing this, which is kind of overlay, so you build the standard system, use some high-level applications, then you can do that. So that is okay. So this is another approach to improve performance if you're really concerned about it. And there is another issue. So far, those schemes, they cannot allow the law enforcement to hold those bad guys accountable because everyone could be the guy who just requested the access, okay? Because they really hide very nicely in information theoretic sense who they are. So sometimes we need a revocation, which means when the leader arrives, the law enforcement FBI can really lock your door. Of course, they don't knock hope they don't knock the wrong door. So it turns out, say, at a very first examination, you realize that the underlying language credential schemes, they already had this kind of capabilities. Okay, so can this kind of be reused in the high level so that the FBI can achieve the similar functionality? It turns out, ironically, that they are useless in this sense, exactly because of this. You can simulate. By you, I mean the adversary can simulate. Okay, so this is something really interesting. So we so far have only a partial solution, which that's the restriction that the policy formula or circuit has to be a DNF. You can transfer it into DNF. And then there are some crypto tricks, which allows we to achieve allows us to achieve revocation. But there is another restriction that because we got common threshold gate, so the input wires has to be an algorithm to secure the parameter. Otherwise, I don't know how can you transfer it into DNF without, with a polynomial expansion. Okay, so we're kind of a partial solution towards very restricted class of the whole class of palisades. Okay. And so if we achieve that, then if you treat the inherent collaboration enabler just mentioned before, if I have something, you have something, we put it together, we can convince the verifier we are legitimate. So if you think that is a tag, not instead of a feature, then this can help out. Okay. Yeah, then related work. Basically, it's 2 lines of research, because as I already mentioned, we're really trying to kind of try to generalize 2 sets and then get it to a unified picture. Okay, unified framework. The first is the policy, flexible policies or somewhat flexible policies are accommodated. There are many constructs from crypto and non-crypto community. So, like the notion of ring signature and or something like that, and say OSPE, you wanted to apply Linghui and others, and the hidden credentials, I think you already familiar with. Okay, but again, they don't accommodate anonymous credentials that we mentioned there. So, to people like me or the crypto community, the unlinked community is really kind of essential, but maybe not to many other people. And then the privacy preserving like these very nice constructs, but they don't really accommodate policies, real life policy. So the conclusion is that we have a kind of general technique, but not general enough in the sense that our policies can only be a certain class of formulas, okay, and then we kind of unify, so achieve some extent of unification, but not the ultimate goal yet. Okay, so that's why I said this is just a first step. And we have many, really many. I don't even try to write it here. So, for example, because the size is proportional to the size of the circuit. So if we can choose logarithmic or even constant size, that would be very nice, isn't it? Independent of the number of inputs. Okay, so I think even for the class of formulas, it's very tough. However, for a very specific class, it's possible. So we have some clue, but the details are not worked out yet. Okay. And then we said that we can choose revocation, but only are very specific of the whole policy which we consider, right? So how can we achieve that without imposing this restriction? And then right now the policy is protected. Is public. So how can we make it secret? And then even if the policies are protected, say like, but still could do inference based on just the query answer. Indeed, in a larger context, I have work we show certain policies or certain knowledge in that context can be really quickly be recovered with very small number of queries. So we need to kind of really quantify it. Okay, so missing is more paranoid. And then indeed, there are several other very challenging problems. So many things could be done. And then
we have a couple of minutes for questions. Have is there an implementation of this algorithm?
Not yet. No. I'm trying to find the students to do that. I really want to kind of so right now we're kind of at the stage of so I'm really excited about it to kind of establish such a unified framework, and then on one hand they need to like make the policy part more powerful. I know there are many senses it cannot express, and on the other hand make it more practical. So I really want to, after I kind of do more, doing more like this kind of theoretical design or investigation, and at some stage I really want to build a system which can be used, in particularly in like a peer-to-peer system as a middleware. So I really want to do that, but I'm still in the process of identifying students. Yeah.
Yeah, in your definition, you have strong properties. Like you require that whenever someone wants to authenticate, he always provide the correct answer. But in most crypto protocols, they say they will provide the correct answer with high probability. You know? So
Certain.
in your work, you assume strong properties. Like, for example, if someone wants to authenticate, he always have to provide the correct answers or to present the correct credentials. But what if? But in most of the crypto protocols, they have this probabilistic technique. They say, okay, you provide the correct answers with high probability.
Oh, okay.
Right. So wouldn't that like complicate stuff in your case?
No. So I think there are two different levels of abstraction of things. So say in the case of the proof the sigma particle, so the guarantee is not really 100%. So, but it is 1 minus some negligible probability. So by negligible means, okay, so even if the other three probabilities of polynomial time you cannot achieve. So, which means that even if after polynomial instance of composition is still preserved. So that doesn't hurt at all.
Are there other questions? Sorry,